Welcome to the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sirenitas. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. Adam Kirkshin is on assignment tonight. Kevin, how are you doing this evening?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Good. Obviously, it was a late night here last night, of course, with the Boston College game on Labor Day night. They defeated Florida State 28-13. We're going to start the show with that, and we're going to get right into that. I want to talk about that. We're going to talk about UMass, UConn, a little bit of what that happened this first weekend in college football. Then we'll get into the Patriots. Of course, they kick off their season on Sunday in Cincinnati. And then we'll talk some high school football, which also kicks off for most of the region this weekend. Before we do all that, I do want to remind you that we are brought to you by Mortgage Right. If you are in the market to sell your current home and purchase your next home or purchase your first home, give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846, or you could shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, Herb is the right man to help you get through the real estate process and get into your new home. If you're looking for an experienced loan officer who knows the system, knows the various programs that are out there, then Herb Devine is your guy. Again, give him a call at 781-254-2846 or shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, Stone, Boston College, as I mentioned to open the show, picks up an impressive 28-13 win last night at Florida State. Seminoles dropped to 0-2. Eagles start the season 0-1. When we talked about 1-0, rather, when we talked about what these first four games could look like for Boston College, I think a lot of us thought, okay, if they split, it's a good start. The schedule gets more manageable after that. They can go on a little bit of a run. Look, if they play like they did last night, they're probably going to come out of this four-game stretch to start the season a little bit better than a split. They could potentially come out of this thing 3-1. Dare I say, maybe even undefeated after 4 weeks. Obviously, they got Duquesne this Saturday in the home opener at the Heights. That's a winnable game. They're practically 2-0. But I want to start with some thoughts on the game last night and what does this win mean for this program?
So I tweeted this last night, and the first thing I thought of, and we talk about this a lot with schools like UConn and UMass. You know, UMass goes out to Georgia this year, right? Like, these are the paycheck games. But there's also an element of recruiting that goes into a lot of this. I think one of the biggest things that won't be talked about out of last night is what that win does for recruiting from a national image standpoint. You know, you're on national television, whole world watching, and you do that. Excuse me, that's a big factor. But in terms of the game, look, you know, I've been talking about the defensive line for a month now. Even I didn't think they would be that disruptive, though. They were dominant at times last night, especially in that first quarter. I think the yardage was 113-4 at one point for total yards. Plays were 21-3. That game never felt in doubt. And especially after Florida State made it 21-13, they rammed it down their throats on the next drive. So 8 plays, 7 of them on the ground. I think 4 minutes and 16 seconds. You go back, you make it 28-13 almost immediately. Excuse me, that's a response drive that this team doesn't make last year or in years past. So there's so many different things that you can take from last night. But if nothing else, it's a professional team. You know, 1 penalty for 15 yards. Tommy didn't turn the ball over. BC, now, Kyle Robichaux almost turned it over. But even the bounce into Reed Harris's hands early in that game, you don't get that bounce the last few years. So a lot of things do feel different. Last night looked and felt different. I'm also very curious to see how they bounce back against an inferior opponent now. You know, after the game, within 10 minutes, Bill O'Brien was saying, we have to turn the page. You know, it's a nice win, but it's only one. So there's so many good things that come out of last night. But the biggest thing to me is just how professional and just clean everything was.
Yeah, I thought that they played their best game in a long time. And it's interesting just listening to people talk about where this win ranks in comparison to other big wins in program history. Look, I think you're shortchanging Boston College football. Some people call this the most important win in the last 15, 20 years. They've had some pretty big wins in the last 30 years. They beat Notre
Yeah.
Dame in 93 out there. That
First,
was a big win. They
first
beat
time,
USC in 2014 here,
I was gonna say.
2007. Yeah, they've had some big wins. So this is a big one, but I do think they've had some bigger wins here in the last 30 years. Look, I think this is a big win because obviously it gets the Bill O'Brien era off to a good start. I also think it's a big win for them because it's a program defining win in terms of where they are right now. But I will say this. I'm 100% with Bill O'Brien here. People really need to pump the brakes. It's great for the program, the national exposure, seeing a lot of the alumni interacting last night during the game, seeing a lot of people talking about how that win is bringing them back to Boston College football. But we need to pump the brakes, okay? Because it's one win. It's a good win on the road against a traditional ACC power. You're going to take that every time. Tallahassee's kind of sort of been a house of horrors for Boston College through the years. Impressive to go down there and win the way they did. They won in dominant fashion. But let's slow our roll here. Now, they'll win this week. They can play like absolute dog crap and they're still going to win. No offense to Duquesne, but they're going to win this week. They're 2-0. If they go out to Missouri in 2 weeks and win there, now the conversation can start changing here in regards to how they fit into the ACC landscape this season. And are they now the conversation could almost become, are they an ACC title contender and could they be in the expanded playoff?
I was going to say, if you can start
let's
looking at,
get there first.
yeah, not to cut you off, you can start looking at 1 or 2 losses. If they get out of Missouri, that schedule, man, that thing softens up quite well. Then you start looking at.
I'm not ready to go there with this program. I don't care who's coaching them.
If they beat Missouri.
It's even if they beat Missouri, I'm not ready to go there. I think that the hype train needs to slow down here. I think people are getting a little carried away with one win, personally. Slow your roll. Here, I'm going to pour cold water on the Boston College enthusiasm. Relax. Come talk to me at the end of the year. If they're 8-4 at the end of the year or 9-3 and they're playing in a reputable bowl game, I will give them their flowers. But let's relax. It's one win. Florida State sucks. They're 0-2 for a reason. That's not a good football team. Yeah. They wasted their money in NIL, bringing in the guys that they did. And Mike Norvell, listen, good recruiter. He rode that talent wave the last couple of years. He turned the program around. But now we're starting to see the real Mike Norvell. And again, I'm not trying to take away from Boston College's win last night. They were dominant. However, that's not a good Florida State football team. Uiagalelei is who we thought he was. He's the guy that we saw at Clemson. He's not the guy that for 1 year put it all together last season at Oregon State under Jonathan Smith, who coaches Michigan State. And they'll be in town in a couple weeks. But for me, DJ Uiagalelei is who we thought he was. He's not a very good quarterback. They couldn't stop you running the ball last night. They were giving up over 5 yards a carry. Again, BC is good up front, experienced offensive line. Ward, Robichaux, good backs, both portal guys that have paid off for Boston College. But I think we have to look at this objectively. Good win on the road against a good team, but to O'Brien's point, it's time to turn the page and move on. And you'll be 2-0. You are 2-0, okay? It's more about what they do 2 weeks from now when they go to Missouri. Again, like I said, if they win that game, I'm going to start to acknowledge them a little bit like I would a Roman Reigns. Took me a while to acknowledge him as my tribal chief, but I'm going to start to acknowledge them more. But I think that the hysteria is a bit much right now.
So I'm with you on the fact that they win this weekend, but is there anything to take out of how they win? You know, this is the type of game where if you're a legitimate top 25 contending team, you blow Duquesne out, right?
In theory, but I think a lot of it is going to come down to how they play, their style of play. If what we saw last night is the way they're going to play all year, they're not going to blow teams out.
Right.
A game like this, they'll still win big, but they're going to play a lot of close games if they're going to be a 70-30 run-to-pass team and lean on our defense. Now, look, if I'm a Boston College football fan, I'm more excited about this Tim Lewis defense than anything else last night because, you know, we talked about Okpala, Ezeraku, Worsley, Rooks, what those guys can do, Cam Arnold at linebacker. I mean, that's a pretty good front seven. And then on the back end, you have a lot of interchangeable pieces. I mean, this roster is tailor-made for what Tim Lewis wants to do in that hybrid 3-4 zone blitz package. I mean, you saw last night a lot of simulated pressure, a lot of disguising. That this team has a type of talent that he needs to run that system.
I thought the biggest thing with the D line last night was the depth. You saw Owen Stoudemire and Edwin Kawanje in there early and often.
Yeah,
I thought we'd see more
which
Josiah
is good.
Hinton. Yeah, no, it speaks volumes to how many guys they're going to need in that type of defense to keep them fresh. But you saw Stoudemire and Kawanje, I think the first series of the game, I think it was their first third down. So that depth was there. Real quick, just on the offense, the fact that you saw nothing out of Duran Bradley, Jaden Skeet, Lewis Bonds, that should be encouraging for BC fans, given the fact that you can win without having to rely on those outside, kind of talented guys. So if you can win multiple ways, again, I think I'm trying to look right now. Each of those guys had like one catch. I think there was 10 completions total. So the fact that they can go out and win possibly several different ways, that's probably what's most encouraging to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. But again, I think this is going to be their recipe for success this season. And in many ways, I think O'Brien gets it. He's a Massachusetts guy. He's a New England guy. He knows what the formula is to win at Boston College, and that's to develop a strong offensive line. That's why he brought Applebaum back to coach him. Develop a strong offensive line, run the football, control the clock. It's going to become even more important that they be able to do that as you get into October, November. He knows the recipe for success up here. And listen, I know a lot of people focus on the fact that they hadn't won 8 games or more since 2009. But look, Daz did the same thing. Adazio recognized pretty quickly, hey, he went out, he recruited A.J. Dillon. We're going to have to run the football, play power football, lean on our defense. I mean, in those early years of Adazio, similar formula. And I think that's how you compete at a Boston College. That's got to be your MO. Take your shots vertically in the play action passing game. Be opportunistic in the drop back passing game. You're going to start to see, I think, a lot of teams now, you're going to see a ton of 8-man boxes, which means you're going to get a lot of single high coverages, a lot of split or rotation coverages. They got to be able to take advantage of that because they're going to have opportunities to make big plays down the field in the passing game. Castellanos looked good throwing the ball last night, but he's still not where you need him to be for your offense to be successful in terms of throwing the ball. Real quick here, staying on college, I do want to pivot and talk about UMass 28-14 loss to Eastern Michigan. I mean, it's just, and I don't want to get too much into it because Ryan Barry and I are going to be doing the college preview show next. Of course, that's usually on Wednesdays. Unfortunately, due to previous commitments, we're going to be doing that show tonight immediately following the New England football show. But just some thoughts on UMass and that tough 28-14 loss to Eastern Michigan.
I believe we both called it pretty close to a must-win this weekend. It was anything but. Same old UMass. Just no-showed at home again. Can't be putting up 14 points against Eastern Michigan. I don't care how well they played. You're at home. It's your home opener. It's one of those years where you need to show significant improvement, and you took a step back. Ugly, embarrassing might be too strong, but that's the kind of loss that simply can't happen if you're UMass.
No, I agree. And it's year 3 of the Don Brown experiment, Don Brown 2.0. But I think at the end of the day, you bring in the right guy in Shea Montgomery to run the offense. Puma's healthy. You've got some really good perimeter pieces led by Anthony Simpson. The running game, it's not going to be as strong as last year, but you have 3 backs that are all different, change of pace, that can do their part. I mean, the bottom line is it's a lot of the same old, same old. They get off to slow starts. They fall behind. The offense can't make enough big plays to get them back into games. They're chasing points throughout the game. And then the bottom line is they typically lose by 1 to 2 scores in games like this. And that's what we saw here. And unfortunately for UMass, it doesn't get any easier now. Now you're going to go to Toledo this week and take on a very good team coached by Jason Candle, a team that's perennially one of the best teams in the MAC and a team that is really tough to beat at the Glass Bowl. So, I mean, this is going to be a tough game for UMass. Again, we're going to preview that, get into that in the show coming up after this, the college preview show. And again, I host that show with Ryan Barry. UConn 50-7 losers to Maryland on Saturday. Again, kind of the same old story, right? We didn't expect this. We thought that they would be better. Nick Evers wins the quarterback competition. He gets the start. He gets hurt. Joe Fagnano comes in, throws a touchdown pass. But it was a tough day all around for the Huskies.
Yeah, copy and paste the same answer. Now, in fairness to UConn, going to Maryland and winning would have been a very tall ask. But you got to show up, right? Like 50-7, man. That's typical UConn the past, what, 4 or 5, God knows how many years.
Other than
And
2 years ago.
yeah, it's a no-show. And Moore wasn't happy. I caught some of his press conference today, and we'll have more on the site tomorrow from that. But it's the exact same thing as UMass. If you're going to take that step forward, make that a competitive game. They were out of it in the first quarter. So, again, copy and paste, same answer. It can happen if you're Jim Moore and UConn.
No, it can't. And it's interesting. I was talking to a UConn alum today extensively about their situation in football. And, first of all, he wants to see Cole Welliver play. And I do think that depending on how the offense goes here in the next 3 or 4 weeks, there is a possibility we could see Cole Welliver. But the frustration level is high. It's high with the alumni. The Big 12 talk, I think, makes things even harder because I think a lot of people feel like, why do we have to wait until 2031 to get into a conference? We need to get into a conference now. It's UConn is in a tough spot. The very least, UMass is going into the MAC next year. I think UConn's just in a really tough spot here. If you were to tell me that they can go into the Big 12 in a couple of years, I'd say, all right, you just weather the storm, keep recruiting well, keep working the portal, build a roster that will allow you to compete in the Big 12 in a couple of years, and just start playing those schools and using that to your advantage. But right now, this program, even though I think they're more talented than they were at this time a year ago, I just don't think they're there yet. And I think ultimately that proves to be the difference. Again, Ryan Barry and I are going to have the college preview show coming up here, so we're going to get into those games in more detail, as well as some of the other games that took place this past weekend. Of course, it was the first weekend of the college football season. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show, presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Serenitas. I'm joined by Kevin Stone. Adam Kirchin is on assignment. Just wanted to shift gears here now and talk Patriots. Of course, the Patriots kick off the 2024 season this Sunday afternoon in Cincinnati against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are kind of a mess themselves with everything that's going on there with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and their contract situations. But, Kevin, we were both up there yesterday, and Gerard Mayo met with the media. He announced the team's captains, who were Jacoby Brissett, Jabril Peppers, Joe Cardona, David Andrews, Jawan Bentley, and Dietrich Wise. He announced those as the captains yesterday. Those guys are going to be your captains. And then Mayo also talked about the dynamics of the quarterback decision. He did acknowledge that Drake May would be the next quarterback in if, God forbid, something were to happen to Jacoby Brissett. But overall, we both were there. We got to watch some practice. We got to watch, we were there for the locker room, talk to the players. I think on the surface, there's a level of confidence in the room. I think the guys are confident. I think they feel that they'll be prepared this week. One of the things that was a key theme that was talked about was that the institutional knowledge that the former Cleveland Brown assistants, Van Pelt, McCartney, Peters, brings with them to New England, because they coach against Cincinnati twice a year the last few years. But when you look at this game, Kevin, and let's preview it here, is this a game that they can win? A lot of people seem to think it could be, given what's going on in Cincinnati and their issues internally. Can they win this game potentially?
So part of me feels like they can, more so because of Cincinnati's struggles early in the season over years past, more than I believe in the Patriots. But I think there's a shot, especially, if you want to talk about Jamar Chase maybe not playing, that changes the entire element of what you're doing with on defense. So I think that's something to watch. Obviously, if he's out, they absolutely have a shot, because I do still think even without Barmore, this defense is going to be very, very good. It's just a matter of offensively. We've seen a little bit of Jacoby in the preseason, but you have no idea what we're getting offensively on Sunday. At least I feel that way. We haven't seen enough, plain and simple. You haven't seen enough of him with the ones, in live, game situations. So am I boring you?
No,
Um, no, I'm kidding.
long day.
I usually do. No, it's yes, I do. I think there's a shot. I don't think it's going to happen, but since he struggles in September, and I do feel like there is an air of I don't know if overconfidence is the word, but they feel like they're ready to go, and I'm not sure if that was the case even a week ago after the last preseason game. So very curious to see how they come out, and I think it'll be low scoring. I think since he wins in the end, but yeah, I think there's a shot.
And Ken Matthias joins the show. Thanks for checking in, Ken. How much confidence you gentlemen have going into week one for the Pats to come home with a win? I mean, if you were to gauge my confidence level, I actually think it's kind of 50-50 here, Kevin. I
Yeah,
do. Because, I mean, again, I think that these internal issues with Cincinnati, with Higgins, with Chase hasn't been practicing. Zach Taylor seemingly is getting annoyed with being asked about his status by their media out there on a week-to-week basis. Joe Burrow is going to be playing in his first game in almost a year. Cincinnati has been notoriously slow starting in recent years. This is a game that if the Patriots can go in there, execute, play well, hang around, kind of game that they could potentially steal in the fourth quarter if they get a key stop, make a key field goal kick, score in a key time in the game. They could potentially walk out of there with a 20-17 win. It would be nice for Gerard Mayo and this organization to get off to a good start, win the opener. I still think Cincinnati's the better football team, and I think ultimately the cream will rise. But given the circumstances with this Bengals team and everything that's going on out there, yeah, the Patriots, I think, have a 50-50 shot of going out there and getting this done.
Yeah, but how worried are you about? Let me rephrase. Gerard Mayo needs regular season games to start. He's got to stop talking. I think first and foremost, what did you think of him leaving Jacoby off the captain's list originally?
Well, I think that was an honest mistake. I don't think that
Okay.
he did it on purpose.
So my cynical side thought, he thinks so less of him and wants Drake to be the quarterback so badly that he just simply kind of left him out there, maybe subconsciously, but it probably was an honest mistake. I was sitting next to Greg Bedard when he followed up with Gerard Mayo, and there was sort of a tense moment there for a minute, and you could, and even his response was, wow, that would have been a fire to put out, or something like that. So he needs games to start, if nothing else, just to talk about football and not everything else that's been going on.
Ken checks back in. How long do you give Coach Mayo a leash on Brissett being the starter? I'm assuming Ken is saying. Well, it's not about us giving him a leash. It's ultimately how Brissett performs and whether or not the organization is comfortable with his performance and how long they want to stick with him. I mean, look, I think if you had asked me 3 months ago, I would have told you we're not going to see Drake May until after the bye. If you ask me now, I think we're going to see Drake May within the first 4 to 6 weeks, if not sooner. I do. I was not impressed with Brissett this summer. I thought he was very mediocre. I thought he had his moments. I think he's everything you want in a bridge quarterback. He's smart, experienced. He's a great teammate. He knows the system. He checks off a lot of boxes. But for me, I didn't see the consistency that you need to see from a veteran starting quarterback if you want to compete. And I don't think the Patriots can compete with Jacoby Brissett playing the way he has played this spring and summer. I think that they're going to need a hell of a lot more out of him moving forward, and I'm not sure they're going to get it. And so I think at the end of the day, I think we're going to see Drake May a lot sooner than people think. And Mayo was asked about Drake May a bunch yesterday, and once again, he continues to talk about the overall evaluation and taking everything into account. He's saying all the right things as to why they went with Brissett, but I think the reality is, to your point earlier, he knows that May outplayed Brissett in this preseason. He knows that May deserves to have a chance to start, but I think May's just going to have to be patient and bide his time.
If you've been a head coach, at some point, how do you look a team in the eye and say one guy won the job, but he's not starting? Like, I still can't wrap my head around that. And I feel like now ultimately Jacoby's a very good veteran teammate. We've already seen it. Just the way he deals with the media and interacts with the locker room. He's much different than Mac ever will be in terms of, dealing with outside situations, if you want to call it. But I can't wrap my head around the fact that you tell your team one guy is better, yet the other guy is playing. It's just,
Well, I think,
it feels like a disaster waiting to happen.
but I don't think it's a disaster waiting to happen in the sense that I think he needs to learn how to deal with the media, and that's going to come with time and experience. And I think that Mayo's the kind of guy that wears it on his sleeve. I think he's the antithesis of Belichick, and that could also be by design. It could be that this is their organizational position now where they're going to be more transparent. But I do think at the end of the day, he's got to do a better job of picking his words wisely. And I think there is some validity to what you said, that he needs the season to start, because he needs to talk about football and the state of the team rather than continue to answer the same questions over and over again about Drake May and
For 5 months.
Myers and right. It's overkill, and I think he's done with it. And I think that in many ways, people are done with it. They want to move on. If Drake May's meant to play this season, he's going to play, and I think we all universally agree he's going to play at some point, whether it's by design or whether it's by circumstance. So we'll see. But I think at the end of the day, this is a winnable game for them Sunday. They got to go out there. They got to run the football. They got to be opportunistic in the passing game. And that defense is going to need to make big plays in key situations. I think if they do that, this is a football team that is more than capable of going out there and getting this upset win. Now, they do have a tough start to the season schedule-wise, but again, like I said, given the current state of affairs with the Cincinnati Bengals, you never know, they can go out there and get it done. Real quick, what are 3 keys for you in this game? What do they need to do? What are 3 things they need to do, in your opinion, in order to win this game?
Well, protect Jacoby, one. Otherwise, we're going to see Drake in, the first half. Because I'm not sure he's mobile enough to get out of the way and deal with what might be coming his way. So that's obviously first and foremost. I'm with you with running the ball. You just paid Ramondre Stevenson. Let him go to work. Keep Joe Burrow in that offense off the field, even if Jamar Chase isn't playing. And then the defense, particularly the secondary. Whether Chase plays or not, is Gonzalez that guy that we all think he is? Is Marcus Jones ready to go? Is Jonathan Jones ready to go? It's a good test to find out right away. So those are probably my biggest 3.
Yeah, that skill group, assuming they all play, that skill group could be really tough to defend, particularly on the outside. I mean, Chase and Higgins might be the best receiver duo in the league. So those guys are terrific. They generate matchups, and they're a problem. And if you're the Patriots, you're going to need your secondary to play really well, because if those guys play, and one has to assume that they will, they could potentially be problematic. All right, we're going to shift gears here now again, and we're going to wrap up the show here with this final segment here. We're going to talk some high school football. Hard to believe, but the high school football season kicks off this weekend in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont. Connecticut kicks off the following week. But it's now we're into the regular season, and we're talking regular season games. I mean, this is a big weekend already for football in Massachusetts. There's a lot of really good matchups on the docket here in week 1. Just some thoughts from you, Kevin, on some of the games we're going to be covering, and just talk about high school football kicking off.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be at Milton and Needham on Friday night. Should be a fantastic matchup. Obviously, Milton, one of the more dominant teams in the state right now, and coming off a huge season. So, and then obviously Needham had sort of their renaissance season a year ago. So that should be a really, really good one. I'm drawing a blank as to what we're covering. We just put the schedule out like 2 hours ago. But some of the games
we're scheduled to also be covering Marshfield at St. John's Prep, which is going to be a terrific matchup. Both very good programs. Marshfield, of course, played in the Super Bowl last year in D2. They'll be a contender again this year. They're going to play a St. John's Prep team that played in the Super Bowl last year. Losses of Aaron, but returned some key pieces from that team. And, could we see Christopher Vargas potentially, the sensational young quarterback for St. John's Prep? We might. that remains to be seen. We're also scheduled to be covering the Foxborough Situate game, which I think is going to be a terrific mid-division matchup between two really good programs in Division 4 and Division 5. Of course, Foxborough won it all last year in D5, and they're the presumptive favorite to repeat this year as well. We're also scheduled to be covering the Zavarian Bishop Fian game. I think this is an intriguing matchup between two programs that have had a lot of success through the years. Zavarian, of course, is the Division 1 defending champion. We're also going to be covering the King Philip Walpole game, which would be a terrific matchup between the Division 2 Super Bowl winner last year, KP, versus the Division 3 Super Bowl finalist in Walpole. Of course, Walpole returning quarterback Noah McKenzie. We're also going to be covering the BC High LaSalle game, and we are scheduled to cover the North Kingstown at Westerly game down in Rhode Island. So we've got a bunch of, and on Saturday, we're going to be covering the CM Cardinal Hayes game, which is going to be a terrific matchup. Cardinal Hayes, one of the top programs in New York. I do want to put this out there. We have a good group of stringers and freelancers, but if you're in Western Mass on Saturday and you're a freelancer and you'd like to make some money, we are looking for someone that is available to cover the Iona Prep Springfield Central game. So DM me or Kevin if you're interested. Final thoughts here before we wrap it up. Quick show tonight. We previewed the Pats, talked about BC again. We have the college football preview show coming up here shortly, but just some final thoughts here, Kevin, on week 1, and what can we look forward to in week 2?
We are in full go mode now, particularly starting this week, but some really good, if I could speak, college matchups this weekend. And I know you and Ryan will touch on this in a little bit, but Holy Cross and UNH, marquee matchup this weekend. I put something up on the site about an hour or two ago, maybe about 3 hours now, but both Dan Curran and Ricky Santos, very close friends. Dan Curran, a former UNH alum, now coaching for Holy Cross in his first home game. There's some great stuff there. Head to the site and check that out as well. But Maine came off its first win. They're now playing at Minnesota. No, URI is at Minnesota.
URI is at Minnesota. Maine is at Montana State. Which
yeah.
It's going to be a tough game.
And then obviously BC's back home. And so again, should be great weather. Get out to a game if you can. We say this every year, every week, but the college football around here does not get enough credit for how good it is. And there's going to be some fantastic games to take in this weekend. And obviously get to a game Friday night. First weekend of high school was always one of the best, especially around here. And we'll have some great matchups covered. So as usual, stay with us. We will be everywhere.
Yeah, and of course, you talked about college football. Of course, the Ivy League's going to kick off here in a couple of weeks. ISL football is also going to be kicking off here shortly. NEPSAC football. So, we'll be in full swing here in the next couple of weeks. But there's plenty of good games this weekend. I mean, if you want to go out and see Bill O'Brien's Eagles in person, they're hosting Duquesne on Saturday at the Heights. Merrimack at UConn. We'll have coverage of that game. Amon Kidway will be there for us on Saturday. That should be a good matchup. It's on paper, UConn should look at it as a potential bounce back game, but Merrimack only lost to Air Force 21-6. And if they played a cleaner game, they could have potentially pulled off the upset. So that speaks to Coach Giannetti and the talent that he has up there. And, if this team puts it together, they could be pretty tough.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to ruin the show coming up, but Gavin McCusker, their quarterback, was hurt about 4 plays into the game, believed to be season ending. So this is Malachi Anthony's team now for Merrimack. And you mentioned it. Their defense played freaking lights out against a pretty good FBS opponent. So they're a team to watch all of a sudden, sort of already 1 week in. They might surprise even, again, I thought they'd be down. They might surprise some people this year. They're going to play hard for Mike Giannetti.
Yeah, no, they absolutely will. And of course, we mentioned some of the other games as well in terms of UMass and some of the other game matchups you talked about, Holy Cross and UNH. So should be a good weekend of college football. Of course, Sunday, Patriots kick off. So everybody's going to be tuned into that. We'll have full coverage of that with our previews throughout the week. And then, of course, don't forget to join me and John Lyons after the game for our Patriots Pulse post-game show where we break the whole game down and, we give you an opportunity to voice your thoughts on the game and share your opinions with us. So we'll be doing that as well. And of course, and as Kevin mentioned, a lot of great high school football action this weekend, a lot of great games throughout the region, but some real good matchups here in Massachusetts. So make sure you get out there and get to some games. All right, that'll do it for this week's show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sirenitas. Till next week, get out there and enjoy some football. It's going to be beautiful this weekend. Peace.
See ya.